Well, let me take you from the cold of Scotland to probably not quite so cold Lincolnshire. I don't know if you've recently travelled out of Nottingham on the A52 towards Grantham, and if you carry on south beyond Grantham, you come to places like Boston, and if you go further, even the Norfolk coast. But about 10 miles the other side of Grantham, there's a big roundabout, and if you go straight on, you go to places like Spalding, where I was brought up in the fens. If you go right, it's Stamford and Peterborough. If you turn left, you come to a little village called Osbournby, a very little village. And this is where Tom Holland had set up his storytelling club. There wasn't much in Osbournby, just a history group that met and a scout group. So this storytelling club was very popular. It used to be a folk club, and it turned around, instead of just having an occasional storyteller, it was storytelling. And usually they got about perhaps 20 people, and occasionally about 30 people. So this is why Tom Holland was so excited. He'd managed to book, probably at the time, the most famous storyteller in the whole of the United Kingdom, none other than Jack Murphy. Jack Murphy had sort of become an overnight sensation. Has anybody here ever been to Hull and Beverley near Hull? Anybody visited there? Well, it's on the Yorkshire coast, and Jack Murphy was telling his tales, and the local BBC recorded him storytelling. It was the theme of the week was the local history, and he told this story, a true story, of these 10 fishermen who died, or would have done, if the lifeboat hadn't saved them. And in fact, they were rescued, but the leader of the lifeboat, he died in the process. And overnight, hundreds of thousands of people watched this clip of Jack Murphy telling his stories. And then he was in demand, not only in the UK, but all around the world, in the Himalayas up in India and in places like Helsinki in Finland. And Tom Holland was so excited and surprised he was willing to come to such a small place like Osbournby. So there was Tom Holland. He was setting the room up, and he was changing the light bulbs in the ceiling from white to a red bulb, and he set up a searchlight that would have focused on Jack Murphy when he started to tell his stories. And he got some black candles and was putting them into these candle stands which the landlord had given him. And about 7:15, the place was almost full. He knew there was probably going to be 100 people there, even though he was charging £20 per ticket. So much was the notoriety of Jack Murphy. And people around about 7:15, Jack Murphy had told Tom Holland to be there well before 7 o'clock. He was not to be seen. And Tom Holland looked at the landlord, and the landlord looked at him, and he realised they needed more seats. So they went out into the patio of the garden. They brought in some garden seats, and even then it was packed out. But people were getting agitated. Why wasn't anything happening? And they went up to the bar, and it was the sort of bar where if you asked for a glass of Merlot, the landlord would say you can either have red wine or you can have white wine. If you asked for a particular beer, you say you can have a dark beer or you can have a light beer. But the locals, they loved it. It was somewhere they could come once a month and have a gossip. But Tom Holland looked round the room, and it was 7:30. No sign of Jack Murphy. And he looked around, he thought, well, there's perhaps one or two people might tell a story, but he's going to have to refund £20 per person, 100 people. And he was just about to get up and stand and say, well, sorry, the evening's cancelled, and the door of the pub opened. There was this figure, an imposing figure, a man in a black jacket, leather jacket, black trousers, crisp white shirt, a fedora hat, wide brimmed, all in black. I'm here! I'm here! He didn't have to shout Jack Murphy because he was so imposing, but he did. He said, I'm sorry I'm late. I got held up on the A1. I don't know if anyone's ever travelled on the A1. He said there was gridlock and this nasty accident just in front of me. I was travelling along and trying to get here, and this car was concertina between two lorries. And the air ambulance was circling above. They closed both sides of the motorway, and they lifted this driver out of his car and took him away on the air ambulance. But somehow I managed to get off at the Mountain Mowbray turn off, and I don't know how I found Osbournby. It's not easy, Osbournby. It's not an easy place to find, is it? And he started to tell his stories, and a lot of them were fishermen's tales. The stormy seas of the North Sea and how the fishermen survived. And some were ghost stories, poltergeist objects that flew across the room for no understandable reason. And at the end of the evening, unusually for a storytelling club, everyone stamped their feet. They stood up and they clapped for at least 5 minutes. It stretched their emotions from squirming on their seats to feelings of real joy and happiness. Anyway, they made off their way home, and Jack Murphy was about to leave, and Tom Holland said, "No, you don't have to go. You can stay the night. The landlord will put you up and he'll give you a cooked breakfast in the morning." Now he said, "I've got to get off. I've got a gig in Brixton, London tomorrow, and no, I've got to get away. I'm sorry." And he just sped away in his car. Tom Holland, he went over to the landlord, and he got a big beam on his face. He'd never made so much money in one night. And he gave him the £40 for the hire of the room. And the landlord helped him to take the chairs back out into the garden, and Tom Holland changed all the lights again in the room, and they tidied up. By the time he got home, it was probably about midnight, and the adrenaline was still going through his body, and eventually he got off to sleep. And then his mobile phone rang about 8 o'clock in the morning. Who would be ringing at 8 o'clock in the morning? Well, he answered the phone. "Oh, is that Tom Holland?" "Yeah, it's Tom speaking." "Yeah, this is Susan, Jack Murphy's sister. I'm sorry, I've got some bad news for you." "Oh yeah, what's that?" "Well, Jack Murphy, he was involved in an accident. On the A1, he got crushed between two lorries. And I'm sorry, the news is even worse." So they took him out into a helicopter, and by the time he arrived at the Queen's Medical Centre in Nottingham, he was dead on arrival. It was 6:30 last night. And Tom Holland said, what time did he say?" 6:30. Thank you.